What's up, everybody? My name is Blaze, and today I wanted to take a second to talk about a little bit of the PlayStation 5 reveal from a couple days ago, from Thursday, and the future of gaming and what it could mean for Nintendo and new games that'll be coming out. Maybe not for the Switch, but maybe for like Nintendo's next console, and what it really could mean for um, just the future in general. I think, and thinking about that, like I think that the Switch is a wonderful console. I love the Switch. I really do. Um, it's a handheld console, a great successor to the 3DS. It's also a home console and a great successor to the Wii U. And I think that when they merged those two together, that was really awesome. But they kind of had this, hardware limitation that they couldn't really get around. PlayStation 5, when it was shown off, there was some, incredible visuals to the PlayStation 5, like just incredible stuff. Um, Mind-blowing graphics, uh, huge environments is the one thing that I kept coming back to. Is I kept seeing just enormous, huge environments with very little load time, um, and I think that is kind of where I'm like, this could be really really cool. And thinking about PlayStation 5, I think no other game showed it off better than Horizon Forbidden West, and I'll play this trailer here for you so you can kind of get a refresher on what that game looked like. I think this game showed off the PlayStation 5's capabilities extremely well. When you look at like water, and you look at the environments, and you look at the landscape and the changing landscape and just where you end up going, I think this game probably blew me away more than any other. And I honestly am looking forward to how well this game does. But when you look at all this, like if you can explore these areas, wow, that's crazy, right? And it's very, very reminiscent of like Breath of the Wild, but on steroids. So, I'm at a loss for words on this, because I think this game showed off the power of the PlayStation 5, next gen hardware, solid state hard drives. Um, in such a way that it's incredible. That's the only way I can say it. It's just incredible. So what does that mean for Nintendo? And that's kind of the question that I wanted to ask today, because I think that it means a lot for PlayStation and the next generation of consoles, even with like Xbox, with the Xbox One X. I don't even know what the Series X. I'm not even sure if that's what they should be calling it right now, because I honestly don't know anything about it. If it's a successor to the Xbox One, or if it's just an upgraded Xbox One. Maybe it's both. I don't know, but they really haven't talked about any details on that. So I'd like to know more before we start talking about the Xbox One. But with PlayStation 4, honestly, PlayStation 5. I'm looking at this thing like it's gonna change a lot. It's gonna take a lot more people to develop the game, and I understand that. So game development time is going to be, kind of through the roof. Luckily, there's no shortage of people who want to develop games. So that's something that I think is going to probably create more jobs in some ways. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work out long term, but you would think that if it took more people to make a game, that the games would just take longer to come out. You'd have higher quality games, but they would just take longer to come out. I don't really know if that is how it's going to work out in the future. Maybe they're just going to hire more people and get more people in. But the scale of this game alone just makes me lose my mind, basically. And PlayStation 5, when it finally does release, is in this holiday, I'm gonna have to get one. Maybe not right away, but I'm gonna have to get a PlayStation 5. And yeah, so that's Horizon, and I wanted to bring that up a little bit before we talked about the future of gaming for Nintendo, because there's a lot to talk about with Nintendo. I imagine a game of this scale and this size, kind of trickling in or affecting the way that Nintendo games are being developed in the future. I was a big proprietor of Pokemon taking on an open world. I think that in Pokemon Sword and Shield, I think there was definitely a push to get into like an open world. I think the wild areas were kind of like a stepping stone to get into an open world environment. I always think about, you know, Breath of the Wild and how Breath of the Wild had these open environments, and how would that work in a Pokemon game if it's something that people even wanted in a Pokemon game. I personally do. I think it would change the way that Pokemon is played. I think it would definitely be a welcome addition because Pokemon generally has this linear story and you really can't, you know, go anywhere other than where they want you to go. And you get things like a group of dancers blocking a path, or you get things like a Pokemon sleeping on this path that you have to get a flute to wake up. You get these situations that don't really make sense, but you can't progress any farther without having to do these menial tasks. Breath of the Wild for Zelda made total sense to have that open world, and I loved it. I honestly loved it so much. I thought that they did such a great job of putting that game together and making the world just feel like it's been lived in, feel like it's got a lot of history and a lot of detail. My only real complaint about Breath of the Wild was two things. One, the low res textures when you're zooming into a faraway place, you can tell that those textures are low res. Not a big deal because the game is still pretty epic, and of course I know why they had to do that. But the other thing is I wanted dungeons that were built into the world, that were built in to the caves, that were underwater, that were, you know, you had to access these dungeons through, you know, moving a boulder or through moving a mountain to reveal a cave entrance, or something epic and something with lore and history. But instead we got the you know, the beasts, and I didn't like those, the mechanical beasts. That was really my only complaint. And I think about games like Mario Odyssey also, where, you know, it's already pretty large. Like, all the worlds in Mario Odyssey are pretty large. And I wonder, like, what it would take or what it would be like to have a game as large as Horizon, or what looks like Horizon's going to be, but with like Mario, and like every world not needing to be transitioned into, so you can actually, you know, you can have your mountaintop snowy world and you can look out over the cliffs and you can see far enough into the distance to see the beach world, you know, that looks like it's maybe 50-60 miles away, something like that. And in between all of that, you've got your city worlds, and you've got your sand deserts, and you've got, you know, and I think more along the lines of Breath of the Wild, where everything is kind of tucked away, but there's no transitions. Like, there's no transitioning from one place to another and seeing this load screen. And Zelda did a great job of not having any transitions, and I think about things like that for Mario, and it seems like they're trying to maybe go that direction with Mario from Mario Odyssey, but I don't know if that's really true. Yeah, I don't know. I think about that a lot. I think about lately, the last couple of days, I've been thinking, how is this going to affect Nintendo, and what are they going to do? I don't believe that every game should be moved into an open world type of environment. I think that's kind of silly, but for some games, it's not going to hurt to try it. For example, Batman Arkham Asylum. I loved that game. I thought it was perfect. It was a little bit like Zelda and a little bit like Tomb Raider and BioShock all mixed together, and I thought it just worked perfectly. But then Batman Arkham City came out, and it didn't have the same feel because it was open world. And I think that there is something to be said about games that do have a progression where things are locked until you get a certain item to go to them. I think there's a lot to be said about games like that. But I also think that the open world can add a lot of value to a game if the game has a story that supports it, or has an ideal that supports this open world. If you're just going to do it just to do it, then that's kind of a waste of time. But if you do it to have something tangible or substantial to speak to or to do, then I think it's cool. But I don't know, and I kind of want your guys' opinion on this. What do you think? What is your vision for the next generation of Nintendo games. Like, what do you think? What do you think that if Nintendo had a console as powerful as PlayStation 5, what kinds of things do you envision from a Nintendo game that took advantage of the power of a console like the PS5? I just used way too many words to describe that, but you know what I mean. Like, what do you think is going to be the future of Nintendo games, given the hardware and the specs that are pushed beyond limits? I think it's an interesting question. And there's probably games out there that I haven't even thought of yet. Games that I'm not even considering right now because I just haven't thought of them. But literally, it seems like with PlayStation 5, there's not going to be very many limits. And one of the developers even said that we're getting to a point of not having to sacrifice a creative vision because of limitations of the hardware. And I think that's commendable. It's crazy to even think about, but yeah, we're going to get there. And I think that even for Nintendo, not this generation, but next generation, it's going to happen. And yeah, we'll see. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I wanted to just kind of get that out there and talk about that a little bit because there's some really great things that are coming out of PlayStation 5. And probably Xbox Series X also, though I haven't seen anything. And Nintendo will probably have some kind of a conference or some kind of a direct or something. I'm guessing within the next couple of weeks. E3 was supposed to be last week, the week of the 7th, I believe, but it didn't happen for COVID-19 reasons. And I'm really hoping that we get something out of Nintendo because I know they planned something months in advance. Probably at the beginning of the year, they planned when they were going to announce their games, what was going to be at E3. It would be foolish to think they didn't plan all that stuff. But since E3 was canceled early on in the year, they probably made a couple of adjustments, but I don't know exactly what they did. So, kind of curious, but we'll see. Something cool may come of it, something may not. We'll have to just kind of wait and see. But we do have the Isle of Armor coming out on the 17th, which is pretty cool. Pokemon DLC expansion, so pretty excited for that. But anyway, I'm going to sign out. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell, go to Twitch, check out Twitter. I have too many social medias. I don't want to talk about all of them, but definitely check me out on any of the social medias. My name is the same on all of them, so check it out. But until next time, guys, thanks again, and I'll catch you on the Flippity Flip.